another edition of the Double Digit Hockey Show. I am your host, John Easthope, and thank you for joining me here on ASTV Productions for another great show. I got an awesome guest lined up for the show today, but before we get there, I want to make sure you all can know how to find the show. Again, Vintage Johnny84 on Twitter and Instagram. You can also find the show at Double Digit Hockey. That's spelled HKY. On the same platforms. Fun show lined up today. We got 2 drafts. We got UFA coming up. We got lots of junior news coming up as well. And so for that, I've got an awesome guy here joining me today. James Johnson from seaofredunfiltered.com joins me today on the show. James, thank you for your time. Thanks for joining me. How are you?
Hey, John, how are you? Yeah, thanks for having me on the show, man. This is awesome. I mean, you've got names like Chris Cuthbert and all these amazing hockey minds on the show, and here I am. So I'm excited to talk some hockey.
Well, it's not often I get a guy who calls himself a stats nerd guy. So that's why I've got you on the show today, because your opinion comes a little bit different than a lot of other guys I have on the show. I have a lot of analysts and a lot of commentators on the show, and I love it. It's fun. But it's not often I get a guy like you with lots of numbers, or Flash on Twitter that a lot of people know him. Ryan Pinder was on my show a few weeks ago. He's a numbers guy. So it's always awesome to see how my opinions differ from those of you stat nerds. Why stats, though? I've got to ask you, why stats? Why are you a stats nerd?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, for me, I've always been a numbers guy. Growing up in school, I was always math, physics, all this stuff. And then, so, watching hockey, it's something I love, right? So I got into the number side of the game. And then I kind of start looking at all these visual charts and all these fun numbers, and it's something that I liked. So obviously there's the eye test part of the game, and I love watching the games for sure. But yeah, like for example, I don't watch a lot of Arizona games, right? So if I can see how their team's doing math-wise, it helps me out, I think. So yeah.
It's one of those things that, and the reason why I like to have you on the show is because you use the eye test to match the numbers part of the game. Is that important for you to make sure that both go hand in hand, or are you one of those that are strictly analytical?
Oh, I definitely look for both, because I think when you have analytics and the eye test together, I think you can't go wrong with that, right? So there's, especially Oilers Twitter, there's a lot of just, the spreadsheet guys, and then there's a lot of just the eye test guys. So I think if you can get a good combination, like, for example, a guy like Blake Coleman, right? Like, you see him on the ice, he's versatile, he's tenacious, he's in your face, and analytically, you can see that in the same thing, right? So definitely need both.
Yeah, I'm in the same mind frame. I'm not a huge numbers guy myself, but I love to have these guys on who know their numbers, and I always ask them on Twitter all the time, I love this player, but is what I'm watching, because that matching up to what the numbers are saying. And it's amazing how many times it says yes and how many times it actually says no. I wanted to dive in a little bit about the Sea of Red Unfiltered. What is it? Why did you come about doing it, and why do you love doing it? I guess would be the next question after that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I read a lot about hockey. I watch hockey. That's one of the major things in my life, right? So I kind of always went towards, maybe I want to write about hockey. And so obviously I joined Sea of Red Unfiltered, great people over there. So it was just something, they already had a good foundation, and then we just had a great prospect series where we went over, some of the targets for the Flames first round. And I mean, we talked about Matthew Coronado, so it worked out. So it's just, I like talking about hockey, but I also like writing about hockey and podcasting and all this stuff. So it worked out great.
Yeah, it's awesome. I was running for a while there, and I love it as well. So We're going to park the conversation on the Flames for a little bit later in the show because I know that's what you're itching to talk about, and you have a lot of stuff on it. I love it. I love talking about it too, but I want to get your thoughts on some other things before we go hard into that because the audience is so much more than just the Flames here. I want to take you back to the Stanley Cup final. It was a fun playoff. I don't care what anybody says. I enjoyed every second of it. I loved most of the series were really good, entertaining, and close. What are your thoughts on what you saw during the Stanley Cup Finals? And then secondly to that, are the Bolts that impressive for you? And what did you make of Montreal?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, a lot of people didn't love the Stanley Cup Finals, which was surprising. I mean, fair enough. You got Tampa in there and the 18 million over the cap or whatever. A lot of people were mad about that, but you know what? I enjoyed the finals. I mean, I said it at the beginning of the year, like they're unstoppable, and then they add David Savard on that right side, and I think he was playing mostly on their third pairing too, right? So they were just so deep. They were almost unbeatable. And it's hard because I mean, you got Braden Point there, Calgary kid, and it's like, the Flames could have drafted this guy, but as for Montreal, I mean, I was impressed. I mean, it's a Cinderella run, right? Like everyone kind of expected them to lose to Toronto. They were the heavy favorites, so it was fun. And then I didn't have them beating Vegas either, so that was awesome. And then, I mean, you can see that analytics played a role in that, but also, I mean, Montreal has a big defense. All their guys are, 6'3", 200 pounds, right? But not just that, but they were also analytically good too, right? So they're not just big, but they also played well. So I think that was probably the biggest key for Montreal was that big defense, and obviously Carey Price too. So
Shea Weber rolled back the clock. It felt like to me when I was watching that Stanley Cup final, he's one of those guys where the eye test does meet the analytics. How good was Shea Weber for you in that final?
oh man, I mean, he's a freak of nature, right? We're finding out now that he might never play again, right? So he was showing up to the rink every day, probably nursing 3 to 4 different things, right? And he's an animal, and he's got that killer shot. I mean, I know Tampa's players weren't too happy with blocking their shots, right? So, man, I felt bad for Shea Weber because you saw at the end where his teammates were consoling him, right? And we didn't really know why, but it comes out now that he might never play again. So it's hard, but he's been such a solid defenseman for so many years.
He's an absolute animal, and it looked like he was 10 years younger than what he actually is. Incredible. We move to the offseason now, and there's been a lot of talk about speculation about and all this about player movement of who goes where. But before we get into that part of the conversation, Seattle's here. How do you to see the Kraken join the National Hockey League?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the Kraken, that was cool. I mean, I love that logo. I've got a hat right here. I mean, just that logo's awesome. And for the expansion draft, honestly, I was a little surprised with some of the picks, if I'm not gonna lie. And it was tough that we kind of knew the picks ahead of time, but obviously you can't fault Frank Saravalli or Elliot Friedman or whoever. It's really the NHL's fault for leaking it and having 10 to 12 hours in between, right? So for Seattle, I was expecting a lot of side deals, like they take Gavin Bayreuther from Columbus, who's a pending UFA, right? They could have signed him for free, but I guess they didn't think there was any other options. Like if I was Seattle, I would have maybe taken Max Domi and flipped him. I'm sure there was a team that would have even offered a 3rd round pick, something for him, right? But obviously I'm not behind the scenes, so maybe there's no market for him. And so Seattle, I'm excited for them because they have a lot of cap space, and it sounds like they're gonna sign Jaden Schwartz in free agency. We'll get into that probably later, but definitely a team that has a lot of cap space.
Mhm.
They're going to be deadly for a couple years if they use that cap space right. So it scares me a little bit being in the Pacific Division.
Ron Francis was smart, though. He went out there and he said that he was going to not do things that are going to strap this team financially at the beginning. He was going to weaponize his cap space that he has. And that's exactly what he did in that expansion draft. We may question some of his picks, but this is exactly what he said he was going to do going into the expansion draft. That being said, what is the biggest surprise in this expansion draft for you? For me, it was the amount of players he took that are just going to be UFAs that he's going to let go.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's probably the same. Like I said, Gavin Bayreuther, you have John Quenneville from Chicago. Like, those were surprising. I didn't expect Carson Twarynski from the Flyers, if I'm being honest. I like the guy because he's a former Hitman, right? And I used to watch him, but they had James Van Riemsdyk there. They had Shane Gostisbehere, maybe more of a cap dump there with Gostisbehere, but you had a couple other players, but obviously JVR is 7 million on the cap, right? And Carson Twarynski is, I don't know, 700,000, 800,000. So Ron Francis, if he wants to go big game hunting and free agency, he's got the cap space. And some of the moves we may be questioned, but we'll see what he does, right?
Let's talk about the moves that we liked with the Seattle Kraken. We all know what Mark Giordano brought for the Flames. It sucks as a Flames fan to lose the captain and one of the best players we've had in this city for a long time. What are the Seattle Kraken getting in Mark Giordano, and was that the best move that they could have made in their expansion draft?
Yeah, seeing Mark Giordano in that Seattle Kraken jersey, that was tough, man. And he kind of looked out of place. Like he kind of almost looks a little lost, right? Because Calgary's all he's known for 15 years. So it was hard to see him go, but ultimately it was the right decision. And huge props to Giordano for
Mm-hmm.
basically telling Tree Living, like, I'm a 38-year-old defenseman. It's time to let me go. And that shows you how good of a leader he is, right? Like, obviously a great presence in the locker room. He's got that. He's got leadership, and analytically, he was amazing this year. Which
Mm-hmm.
I threw that on Twitter probably right as the season ended, and people were surprised, right? Because my eye test and other people's eye test, we kind of saw him going down a little bit. I thought, but he actually improved in 2020,
Mm-hmm.
2021. So that was kind of cool, but yeah, Seattle, that was definitely the right decision for them, I think, because other than that, Calgary, Milan Lucic, he's got that leadership, but 5 million for him, that's way too high. You have Oliver Shillington,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a sixth defenseman, maybe. So Mark Giordano was definitely the
Mm-hmm.
right decision for them, I think. And props to them. I mean, they've got hopefully their future captain. That would be cool to see.
There's a lot of talk around what they should have done with Carey Price, taking him or not, where they're going to go in goal. They end up signing Chris Driedger. They go out and they draft a couple of other nice young goaltenders. What do you make of the goaltending for the Seattle Kraken heading into the 21-22 season?
Mhm. Yeah, obviously Carey Price, I think, they definitely looked into him, and then, Montreal, he had those injuries, kinda every day it seemed like a new injury was coming out, so that kinda maybe put the Kraken away from Price, but I like their goaltending, and at the same time, I think it can be better. Dreger has been great in
Mhm,
Florida for the past couple years, and another former hitman, so that's cool to see. Um, I mean,
mhm,
3.5 times 3 for him is good, and then Vanacek was amazing in Washington this year, so having him as a backup, that's awesome for them. So I think it's an
mhm,
average tandem. It's not top 10. It's not gonna, Dreger isn't gonna carry you in a playoff round,
mhm,
but I think it's definitely better than Edmonton or better than some other teams. So, and I guess the main key for Seattle was probably that tandem combined is, 4.5 million. So that's a lot cheaper than a lot of teams starting goaltender, right? So definitely
mhm,
not a tremendous tandem by any means, but it's a cost efficient
mhm,
tandem. It could surprise us for sure. And yeah, I'm excited to see because Drieger, I've been a fan for him for a while, right? Former Hitman, and he definitely was amazing in Florida, and partly due is because Florida was amazing this year. But
mhm,
yeah, definitely Carey Price would have been a cool, really cool story to see in Seattle, and it would have been, he would have sold so many jerseys. It would have been the face of the franchise, but you got to look at that 10.5 million, right? And right now the Kraken, I mean, 5 million
mhm.
in goal, that's pretty good.
That tandem for me, for all three of you, put all three goaltenders together for me, continue to convince me the message of cap. We're not going to allow ourselves to get strapped in cap space. We're not going to allow ourselves to overspend. Carey Price would have been nice, but you put all three goaltenders they selected together, and Price still makes more than all three of them together. So I think it was really actually
Yeah,
smart on the side of Ron Francis because he wants to build a longer term team. And I love the Vanacek pick
yeah,
in goal for them. So he has all this cap space now. And come Wednesday, where this show actually airs, free agency opens.
yep.
Is this now, in your eyes, where we expect Ron Francis to open up the checkbook? And you mentioned Jaden Schwartz is out there, Landeskog is out there, Dougie Hamilton's there. What are your expectations personally for Seattle when free agency opens?
Yeah, I mean, everyone, all the insiders, media members are kind of saying, right? Like they've got 30 million in cap space almost. Like they're going to do some things. And you have to remember, too, that Seattle had a couple days there to talk to every free agent on the market, right? So, I mean, it sounds like they're going to sign Jaden Schwartz, which that's a good defensive winger, one of the best defensive wingers in the entire league, looking at his metrics. So, obviously, if you look at the Kraken right now, their left wing is pretty weak, so Schwartz will slot in there. If they could get a center, maybe Philip Deneau. I don't know if he's been linked to the Kraken or whatever, but if you can get maybe Philip Deneau for 6 million, Schwartz for 5 million, right? You're still from 30 million, you still have 19 million after that, right? And then you look at that blue line and Dougie Hamilton next to Mark Giordano, that would be pretty cool because they played together in Calgary, right? So if they can add Hamilton to that blue line, then maybe they can ship out Vince Dunn and Carson Soucy, get some assets back, right? And I mean, if you get Giordano, Hamilton, Alexiak, and Adam Larson,
Mhm,
that's a pretty nice top four. So definitely, I'm expecting some big things from the Kraken in free agency for sure. But they might maybe they don't go all in this year. Maybe they give themselves a little bit of flexibility for the
mhm.
next coming years. And I mean, that's a good idea too, right? You don't want to commit, I don't know, 6 years to Jaden Schwartz or this player, that player, right? You want to get those shorter term deals for free agents, so you have that flexibility going forward. So I think that's something the Kraken can look at too. Maybe Andreas Athanasiou, right? Like guys like that on a 1-year deal where it's not going to break the bank, and maybe it works out for you. And if not, he's gone the year after, right? So
You mentioned Philip Deneau, and that's another name that I think about when I think of the Seattle Kraken and a guy that they might be targeting. They are pretty thin down the middle. Heading into the entry draft, they addressed that. They at number 2 take Matthew Beniers.
yep.
Good draft pick for them. Does that fit for you for them, or should they have gone a different direction in your eyes?
Yeah, that's a great question because I mean, we all kind of thought Owen Power was going number 1 and Beniers was going number 2, and I really like Matty Beniers because I mean, scouts describe him as a workhorse, right? Like he's a fast skater, he's in your face, he's up and down the ice, right? So that's someone you can take a gamble on. And maybe, I mean, William Eklund maybe was a better pick if you wanted a bit more skill per se, or Mason McTavish if you wanted more of that, size and truculence, if we're quoting Brian Burke. But I liked the Matty Beniers pick, and I think going forward, I think he stays a year or two in Michigan. So it gives them an option going forward because their center depth is weak. So if adding Matty Beniers to that it's ideal, right? It's the most important position.
You talked about him there. A little bit of a surprise for me at number 3 when Seattle did go Mason McTavish. In your eyes and what you guys saw at the Sea of Red Unfiltered, why was that a good draft pick for the Anaheim Ducks, number 3?
Yeah, I mean, I personally didn't expect McTavish to go as high as 3. I kind of heard I think it was Aaron Portsline from Columbus that said maybe he'd be an option at 5 for Columbus, but I certainly didn't expect him to go at 3, but that was probably due to his performance at the U18s where he was exceptional, right? Next to Bedard and Wright on that stacked team. So I think he definitely boosted his value there, and he's raw, right? Like he's got skills that you look for in a centerman, especially Anaheim too, in losing Ryan Getzlaf. If they lose Ryan Getzlaf, I mean, Zegras and McTavish up the middle, that's a pretty decent 1-2 punch for the next 15 years. So good on. It was a bit of a surprise for me, if I'm being honest, because I didn't expect him to go at 3, but I can't say anything bad about the pick because this draft is so weird, and we knew there was gonna be a couple eye scratchers. So yeah, McTavish, he's got everything you need, right? He's got that size, he's got that truculence per se. So.
You had Kent Johnson go 5 to Columbus and William Ekblad 7 to Jose. So a run of centers early. I liked seeing that. I like seeing these teams address the center position. I like seeing that. It was interesting the order they came out, because I thought William Ekblad might have been the number 2 pick for the Seattle Kraken. Did he fall in your eyes at number 7 to San Jose, or is that about where you had him pegged going forward for you?
I think he absolutely fell, and I was hoping he would go 1 to Buffalo because I truly thought he was the most skilled player in this draft. But it's from a Calgary perspective, it's kind of a shame that he ended up in San Jose, right? But good for them, man. I mean, it's been a struggle over these past 2 years where they commit to these long-term contracts for Vlasic and Burns and Carlson and Couture, and San Jose fans aren't the happiest right now. So I think when you add a player of Eklund's skill and he falls to you at 7, you definitely can't be upset with that pick. And I mean, personally, I would have had him anywhere from 1 to 3. So
Mm-hmm.
really a huge steal for San Jose there.
We talk about Buffalo, and people have said that consensus number 1 was Owen Powers. My theory is Buffalo, if they're trading away like they did with Reinhart, and they want to trade away Jack Eichel, that they should probably give themselves another building block up the middle to help out Dylan Cousins. So I thought that they would go the Matthew Beniers route or the William Ekblad route. But was drafting Owen Powers a mistake for Buffalo, or was that a good draft pick in your eyes for them?
I don't know about mistake per se, because I mean, he's 6'5". From all reports, he's pretty solid. He played with Canada and he was pretty solid, so I don't think it was a mistake per se, but maybe I would have gone a different way since they have Rasmus Dahlin on that left side already. But like you said, maybe drafting Eklund or drafting Beniers would have been a better fit for them. But by all reports, Power was the number 1, and you have to go best player available. I mean, that's my personal belief in the draft is always draft the best player, and you can trade for needs later. So for Buffalo, I think, I don't know, it wasn't a mistake per se, but it's still a great pick. Maybe I would have gone another route, but you can't go wrong with a 6'5" defenseman. So
it reminds me of the conversation back when the Islanders at number 1 and they were trying to pick between Victor Hedman or Jonathan Tavares. And we all know how those discussions went and how that ended up. So that, for me, was what Buffalo was doing this year. And I don't discredit them taking Owen Powers at all. That's a good draft pick for them. I think we have a case scenario for a player here in the top 5, though, in the top 6 here. Detroit, I think they actually got themselves Nicholas Lidstrom 2.0 light. And I'm not saying he's the next Lindstrom, but Simon Edvinsson is a great draft pick for him. He fits what Stevie I do. Is this for you? Do you see it the same way I do? This is like the perfect fit in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, whenever Stevie Y makes a decision, right? Like you can't question him because he's such a great GM. And I think Edvinsson, by scouting reports, maybe lacks a little bit of that hockey IQ, maybe struggles to play the puck every now and then, but he's raw, right? And in this draft, you weren't getting an NHLer for year 1. So I think he's also 6'5". So him and Moritz Seider as a pairing, that's gonna be killer. I don't know about, number 1 defenseman per se. I wouldn't say he projects to be I would say maybe top 4 if everything works out, but definitely I think Bob McKenzie had him ranked tied for 2nd, so in a way he fell to Detroit based on what scouts thought. So I think it was a good decision for Detroit. Maybe I think I said they should have gone William Eklund because his teammate is Lucas Raymond, who is also a Detroit prospect. So that would have been cool to see them kind of combine, and play together overseas and then come here in Detroit and play together. But you can't go wrong with Simon Edvinsson, I think. And he's raw. He's got the tools. Detroit just needs to develop him right. So
you talk about Stevie Yzerman decisions. Well, he made the decision to do something that I wouldn't have done and that a lot of people don't like to do. He trades back up into the first round, and he finds off a goaltender. So then he was the first of 2 goalies taken. So Sebastian Costa to 15 to Detroit, and then we saw Jesper Wallstedt at 20 to Minnesota. What do you make of 2 goaltenders going in round 1?
Yeah, so starting off with Kosa, I think he's 6'6", so for a goalie, that's great size. And he's been great for the Edmonton Oil Kings for years. He put up a tremendous season this year. Obviously, it was a shortened season due to COVID, but
Mm-hmm.
kind of liked, the balls on Stevie Y per se to trade up and take Costa because he's got, you know, he's a 6'6" goaltender. I think most scouts had Wallstedt as, maybe the higher ceiling per se, but
Mm-hmm.
I kind of like the Costa pick, to be honest, because you can't go wrong. And the Edmonton Oil Kings, like, that's a great organization. You can't go wrong picking a player for them. As for Wallstedt, I kind of thought he would go, 10th to Ottawa. Maybe I thought he might go to
Mm-hmm.
Columbus at 12. Yeah, so he fell a lot further than I thought, and I think most scouts thought too. So Minnesota trading up for him that's a good idea, right? Because they have Cam Talbot
Mm-hmm.
now. You have Capo Kakinen, who's a great young goaltender, but maybe doesn't have the ceiling to be that elite, starting goaltender. And
Mm-hmm.
now you have Jesper Wallstedt bringing in. So your goaltending situation in Minnesota is solved for the foreseeable future if everything works out. And Wallstedt, I think positioning is his strength. I think he's only 6 foot. Don't quote me on that, but he's not as big as Kosa, so that might have been why he fell, but
Mm-hmm.
he's got the package. And from a Calgary perspective, I almost would have taken a shot on Wallstedt at 12. I was kind of thinking maybe
Mm-hmm.
they should, but at the same time, drafting a goalie in the first round is always risky. So I'm kind of glad they went a
It's not.
different route.
It's not risky. It's not risky for Stevie Yzerman. He's done it before, and that goaltender's now won back-to-back Stanley Cups with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So he's not shy
There you
to
go.
do it. So we'll see how this one turns out. We get to the self-serving question with Calgary and their draft pick. I want to ask you about one guy who I was really high on. He doesn't come the conventional route. He's in the AHL with the Bandits. Corson, I almost called him it's the wrong name again. Corson Clemens falls to 25 to the Columbus Blue Jackets. He was a guy that I was really interested in. What is Columbus getting here at 25? And do you project to be a top pairing defenseman for yourself?
Yeah, so for me at 12 with Calgary, I had Sillinger at number 1, and then I had Coronado and Coolmans tied at 2. So I'm like yourself, I'm really high on Coolmans. I think, you look at
Mm-hmm.
a right hand shot defenseman from the Brooks Bandits, and you think, Cale Makar, right? So
Yeah.
I'm high on him for sure. He's got the offensive skills already, and that's impressive. Defensively, there's some things to work out, and that was seen at the
Mm-hmm.
U18s, which could be why he fell a bit. But like you said, I don't know about maybe top 2, but Columbus, man, they had a really good couple days in getting Adam
Mm-hmm.
Boquist, Jake Bean, and Corson Coolmans on their back end. I mean, that's impressive because
Mm-hmm.
if
Absolutely.
everything works out, that's 3 of your 4 top 4 defensemen, right? That's awesome. So Coolmans, definitely, I looked at him at 12 a lot, and I thought that would be a good pick because the Flames definitely need defensemen. But Columbus
Mm-hmm.
had an awesome draft, so he's raw.
They did
So
have
that'll
an
work.
awesome draft. They had a really good draft in Columbus. They had a nice trade beforehand. They go out there and they have 3 first-round draft picks, and they hit all 3 of them, I think. They took at number 12, who Flame fans wanted at 13. Talk about Cole Sillinger. Talk about the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to get in him, and then we'll transition to this consolation of Matt Coronado for the Flames.
Yeah. So like I said, for me at 12, it was Sillinger was the top choice, and then it was Coronado and Coolmans, right? So Sillinger, he can play center, he can play the wing, and he's got he's got a deadly shot, right? So everything for me, it looked like an ideal pick because the Flames need a shooter. That's not new news to anybody, I don't think. We don't score goals. So it was good, and I think if you're looking at the analytics of prospects, Sillinger was definitely had the best chance to become an NHLer. He had those raw puck skills that you look for in a draft pick, and I thought Columbus did great. I thought Johnson was a little bit of a reach from where I thought he would go, but I mean, one of the best, if not the best, players with the puck in this draft. So
Mhm.
Columbus, I mean, you lose Pierre-Luc Dubois and you've got a hole down the middle. That's not new news to anybody. So now you've got Kent Johnson coming up. You've got Cole Sillinger. If he plays center, maybe he shifts to the wing.
Mhm.
So I thought I'm a big fan of what Columbus is doing because I see the need for them to rebuild. And that package for Seth Jones was awesome. Getting Adam Boquist and Cole Sillinger for Seth Jones.
Mhm.
Plus, you have another first round pick coming next year. That's good on Columbus, man. I was very happy for them.
For me, they had the best opening day of the draft. If you take in the Seth Jones trade that we got, draft two nice players up front, a nice defenseman, they're well on their way to turning that franchise around, and knows that they need it if they can only sort out now what they have in Max Domi as well. But that's
Yeah.
for another time and another show. You look at this round in a whole, and I think the answer might be obvious, and we won't get into the political side of it if it is. What is the biggest surprise for you of round one on day one?
Yeah, so I mean, the biggest surprise was definitely, the last two picks, I think, because everything was kind of looking good. The draft was exciting, and then it all went downhill, right? And it's tough because I think Logan Mailloux, if that's how you say his name, he's a good talent, and it's sad to see that some teams were still that not only Montreal but other teams were going to take him in the second round after he said, I don't want to be drafted this year, but it's still a head scratcher for Montreal because when you draft a player, you send out a, welcome to the Sea of Red, Matt Coronado, right? You don't normally send out a statement when you draft your player, and that should tell you everything you need to know. And I thought Bob McKenzie said it best in replying to that statement and saying, Montreal said we're going to work with him and, help him through. And Bob McKenzie basically said, like, how is Logan going to learn from his mistakes if he's not getting any repercussions, right? Like, if he's asking not to be drafted, why would you draft him in the first round? I really don't get it. And then Chicago, we know what's going on with their former assistant coach, Brad Aldrich, and that organization hiding that for so many years. And that's a terrible story. And then I like that Chicago kind of emulated all the women in their organization, but to me, it looked like a PR stunt, right? They basically
Absolutely.
had all these women there basically to say, we're still a good organization. Don't worry about this, sexual assault thing. Look at all these women that we have, and good on them for hiring all these women because hockey needs to move forward. And in that aspect, they're an organization that's doing that. So that's good. But yeah, definitely those last two picks left a bit of a bad taste in my mouth, as well as I think most people. So that was the biggest surprise.
I'm
for
right
me.
there. I'm right there with you, and I'm glad how you worded. I'm not going to get into it too much. I thought on my other show, it's tough because it's two very big topics and things that need to be discussed. And I'm going to have another show on those particular topics later on. But it kind of put a damper on the NHL and on the first day of the draft, seeing that those two came forward at the end there and did what you didn't want them to do. And so a very disappointing end to round one for me as well as you. So well put there, James. Thank you for your thoughts on those. We're going to move along to a happier conversation, but we will have those conversations on another episode of the Double Digit Hockey Show. Let's talk about the Calgary Flames. A lot to be made of this offseason for the Flames. It kicked off with Mark Giordano being taken in the expansion draft. They will go out and have themselves what I'm calling a stock the cupboard type draft. What did you make of this week for the Calgary with losing Mark Giordano, but then gaining a bunch of prospects?
Yeah, it was a hard week in losing Mark Giordano. But at the same time, if you look at it, with your morals aside and everything, it's $7 million free in cap space, right? So it was hard losing him, but I thought they drafted good. I didn't think they drafted great. I didn't think they drafted bad. I thought they drafted good. So I was impressed. I mean, I liked the Coronado pick. Like I said, he was kind of my second choice right there. And I kind of thought he might go to Ottawa at 10. And then they kind of go out completely off the board with Tyler Boucher. And that's a funny story. But I didn't think we would get Sillinger or Coronado. So I was happy to see us get Coronado because he's the best. He was, as Todd Button said, he was the best player available, but he also fit a need for the Flames. And he's a right-hand shot, and he scores goals. So that's, in my eyes, that was an A grade level pick because it fills the need. And I mean, there's a couple people, excuse me, there's a couple people that are scared he might stay in Harvard and not sign with the Flames. I don't think that's the case. At least I hope it's not the case. And by all accounts,
I don't buy that.
Yeah, he was super happy to be in Calgary. And he said, Johnny Gaudreau is someone he loves to watch, and that's one of his favorite players. So maybe in 3 years he can play with Johnny Gaudreau. So that might be one of the ideas for maybe him coming to Calgary, and maybe the Flames should re-sign Johnny Gaudreau too, but we can talk about that too. But as for the rest of the draft,
we will.
Yeah, for sure. As for the rest of the draft, I liked the William Stromgren pick in the second round. To be honest, I didn't know a lot about him. And I was rooting for, Logan Stankoven because, he was a cool pick because, fun name first off, and then he played with Connor Zary and Kamloops. So that would have been cool. But I think William Stromgren that's a good pick from everything I've read. Some scouts actually had him in the first round. Maybe the Flames did too. Who knows? But I mean, 6'3", you can't go wrong with that. Kind of has a power forward element to his game, but is also very skilled. So I think if he adds some size, he could be good. And then for the rest of the draft, I was kind of surprised how well the Flames drafted in rounds 3 and 5, because throughout the draft, I was kind of putting out a list of players I thought would be the best available, and they ended up drafting Cole Huckins, who was on that list, Cameron Wynot, who was on that list, and Cole Jordan, who was on that list. So I think in a draft where, some people said it wasn't going to be the best draft, they weren't going to be, those high-end prospects, I think the Flames did well because, Cole Huckins, that's a big centerman, can play the wing too. He gives you that versatility. And then Cameron Wynot, we need defensemen in Calgary. It's an obvious. So I liked that pick, and that was someone I was pretty high on by all accounts. And then I thought they really brought it home with the Cole Jordan pick. By all
Me
accounts, he
too.
was a third round talent from scouts and falling to the Flames in the 5th round. I mean, some people were very happy, myself included, because he was number 1 on that list for me of, the best player available from here down. I think he was even on my list in that 3rd round when Cameron Wynot and Cole Huckins were there. I think Cole Jordan was on that list, so I didn't expect him to fall to the Flames. As for
What
the
I like with the
6th
Flames.
round, sorry,
Go ahead.
go ahead. Okay.
No, go ahead. No, you're
As
good.
for
Keep
the
going.
Okay. As for the 6th round, I thought I can't remember his name, Jack Beck, he didn't play this year, so it's kind of a wild card in the 6th round. Might as well throw your dart at the board and see if it sticks. And then oh man, I'm blanking on that other 6th rounder.
I don't have that one written down. I can't help you out there. I'd have to look it up.
Oh yeah,
but the one thing I do like about the Flames, the one thing I like about the Flames draft here, so we're talking about these guys, and while we think about that name, is they went to these junior factories that produce hockey players like Fax Mooseheads, where they're going back to the well, these programs that are known for producing these NHL level talent. So that's one thing I was really impressed with when I saw the Flames draft is they went with familiarity, which would help in this type of a draft with the COVID and all that, not being able to draft or scout properly for the draft. And they were able to find themselves some nice talent. How Cole Jordan was there where he was is beyond me, but it was an amazing draft from the Flames overall for me.
Yeah, for sure. And that name just came to me, Lucas Siona, who's Edmonton kid and an Oilers fan, so that's kind of fun whenever you draft someone from Edmonton and now they're a Flames fan, right? So that's kind of fun. And like I said, 6th round, he's a kind of a raw power forward type, so roll the dice on him. Let's see if it works out. And then I liked them taking a chance on the goaltender in the 7th round. I can't remember his name. I think it's Arseny Sergeyev, something like that.
I can't pronounce his name.
Yeah. So the Flames, you have Dustin Wolf in the system. You have Daniil Chechelev from last year. So I like that, it's the 7th round in a weak draft per most people's thoughts. So I like that they took a chance on a goalie, right? You never know what's going to happen. And so overall, the draft, I thought it was good. I thought it was a good draft.
This was a draft where you were uncertain on a lot of things, but you still would have had a decent list and good discussions around a lot of players. There was a player there that was sitting there in the 2nd round that should have been, and by all means could have been, if he progressed a top 2-3 draft pick. I should have asked you this before we got into the Flames. I'm interested where you are with Atu Ratty or Atu Ratu, however you're pronouncing it. Why did he fall to round 2 for you, and why wasn't he able to maybe take that next step in here?
Yeah, so Ratty is interesting because he was projected to be that 1st overall pick a couple years ago, and then for him falling in the 2nd round, I expected maybe early 2nd round, sorry. So I was a little surprised to see him keep falling, and I think that's due. I've heard, he's struggled with that pressure of being that projected 1st round pick. So I hope he figures it out now. Maybe that he's been drafted and that pressure's off him. I think he scored 4 goals in a game right after he was drafted, which was pretty cool. So I think if he fully progresses, the Islanders got a good pick there, but there's definitely some skepticism on that pick because most scouts don't really have him projecting to be an NHL player anymore. Maybe, a third line center if he reaches his ceiling. So in the 2nd round, I thought for their 1st pick, the Islanders if he works out for them, that's a good selection because it's it's a good player to take a chance on because he had that projection to go
Mhm.
first a couple of years ago if he figures it out. And from a Flames perspective, maybe let's say they drafted Ratty instead of Stromgren, you know, I don't know if I wouldn't have been upset with that per se at all because as I said, the center position is the
Mhm.
most important position in hockey by far. So you can never have enough, excuse me, you can never have enough players there, right? So I like the Stromgren pick though from the
Mhm.
Flames, but Ratty I think was a good selection for New York because if he can figure it out, he could surprise some people and prove the scouts that maybe had him as a third round talent now, he could prove them wrong. So
Mhm. He's definitely a name I'm going to be watching his NHL career as it progresses because he should have been in that top five for me before this season happened. So race for me, but it'll be interesting to see. You talk about the pressure that some of these kids feel. So let's talk about the kids in the Flames organization. Who are your top couple of prospects that you're excited to see come forward for the Flames? And then a second part of that question is, does a guy like Jacob Pelche have what it takes in your eyes to make the jump to the NHL next year?
mm, yeah, that's a great question because by all accounts, Peltier, he's kind of got that hidden leadership material, and we saw that displayed at the World Juniors when he was going and consoling every player
Mm-hmm.
after they lost that gold medal game. So he'll definitely be a fit. I think maybe I don't know if he makes the team this year per se. I think maybe a year of development in the AHL could be very beneficial for him. But that being said, right
Mm-hmm.
now looking at the Flames roster, there's a lot there's a lot of spots open. So I think the chance for him is there if he wants it. So
Mm-hmm.
Pelche, he's definitely one of the most exciting prospects I think in the Flame system because, we don't have a lot of those high-end prospects. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, he could be that kind of third line, Barclay Goodrow, Blake Coleman kind of player where, he doesn't
Mm-hmm.
shine you with his skill or his puck handling, but he's gonna grind you down and he's got that leadership. So I
Mm-hmm.
think he's definitely someone I'm excited for. Maybe not this year, but definitely the year after. I think he makes the team for sure. And then as for
Mm-hmm.
other prospects I'm excited for with the Flames, I mean, Connor Zary, their first round selection last year. Obviously, he didn't play a ton
Mm-hmm.
because the WHL was on hold for most of this year due to COVID. But I think if he hits his ceiling, he could be our second or third line center, maybe a winger. But the Flames, they don't have those high end guys, so it's tough to be, super high on all these prospects because I don't think a lot are gonna make it. But I really like Ryan Francis too, who was our fifth round pick last year. By all means,
Mm-hmm.
a bit of a back end, and he's proved other teams that passed on him wrong because he's lighting up the QMJHL. And that's
Mm-hmm.
another thing is the Flames have definitely trended towards QMJHL players. They drafted
Mm-hmm.
Peltier, and then they drafted Francis, and then they drafted Cole Huckins this year. They drafted Cam Wynot. I'm missing one other player, but whoever they have scouting there
Zach
is
Narogny's in
paying
there.
off. Sorry?
Zach Narogny would be one.
Yeah, that's right. So whoever they have scouting there is certainly it's working out for them because they're getting some per se steals, draft steals from the QMJHL. So that's something to
Mm-hmm.
look at. It. Those prospects are definitely interesting for me because the Flames, we don't have the best prospect pool per se, and that shouldn't come to a surprise to anybody because we've traded away a lot of picks in recent years for Hamonic and all these guys. So I was excited that they didn't trade their picks this year and that they, as you said, they filled the cupboards a bit because that's definitely something we needed to do. So
Mhm.
I'm happy with that.
We talk a lot about the prospects and about the future and about what we want to see from the Flames coming down the pipeline, all that kind of stuff. But the conversation as well this offseason has been about change. We got one change already with the captain no longer here. There's lots of rumors around a lot of other guys, and I want to ask you about a couple of those guys before we wrap up. In your eyes, I think I know where you stand already, but for those listening, what are you doing with Sean Monahan before the start of next season? Or are you keeping Sean Monahan as kind of a hope that he bounces back?
Yeah, that's a great question because for the past couple seasons, if you know me on Twitter, I haven't been high on Sean Monahan for obvious reasons because he's digressed. But I sent out a tweet at the beginning of the offseason and I said you have two options with Sean Monahan. You either keep him for next year and hope he rebounds and recovers from his injuries fully and maybe he pots 30 goals or whatever, and then you can trade him after that, or keep him long term, or you can trade him now and get back, I don't know, maybe a second round pick. I don't know, maybe if I'm looking at Ottawa, maybe they want to trade Logan Brown, so maybe you trade Monahan for Logan Brown and a late pick or something. But what I'm saying is you're not going to get a great return for Monahan this offseason. So it's tough because there's a part of me that wants to hang on to him and hope that he can rebound and we can trade him next year. But at the same time, there's a part of me that says, he's making $6.4 million a season. And if I threw a name out there, let's say they trade him and a pick in exchange for Christian Dvorak from Arizona, something like that, that the Flames have been, he's someone that the Flames have been rumored to be in on. So maybe you improve that center core by adding a pick with Monahan as opposed to, trading him for a third round pick or whatever you can get for Monahan. So for me, it depends on what other teams value him as, right? Is because like 2 seasons ago, he scored 78 points in 82 games. Like I'm sure he's still got some value, but he's been injured for 2 seasons. So it'll be interesting to see if the Flames move on to him. And we've heard, some rumblings that they're shopping him around a bit. So it'll be interesting to see. One way or the other, I think you can't really make a wrong decision, but it might not pay off for you in the long term. Let's say you trade Monahan for a third round pick this year, and then he goes on Ottawa and he scores 35 goals, right? Then you've lost that trade. But if you hang on to him for next season and, he's struggling even more and he sadly gets another injury, then your trade asset has decreased even more, right? So, yeah, the Sean Monahan conversations, it's a good one because I don't really think there's a set answer, if that makes sense. Like for me, I'm not really sure. Maybe I would, because it depends what the Flames want to do, right? They have the cap space. But do they want, I mean, if they go out and they get a Jack Eichel per se, then your center core is, maybe you move Lindholm to the wing, but then your center core is, Eichel, Monahan, Backlund. That's a pretty expensive pretty expensive center core. So
I knew you stand on Sean Monahan, so I had to ask you the question. question and see if you
Yeah.
had a good answer for me. I'm in camp keep him because you've heard it on my shows before. I'm on team camp because I believe he has a good candidate for being a bounce back guy, and I look elsewhere to try to make move for the Flames. Another guy out there, this is a big conversation to have, and it's the Johnny Gaudreau conversation. We alluded to it earlier in the show. I'm going to give you the GM hat. You're virtual living now. What are you doing with Johnny Gaudreau? Are you signing him to that extension? Are you going to try to move him? Or what is your move with Johnny Gaudreau?
Yeah, so the Johnny Gaudreau conversation has been a good one on Twitter, especially because I think most fans want to see him re-signed. I hope so. I hope he re-signs with Calgary because analytically he's been the driver of the Calgary Flames offense. And I can see that he didn't play well this year because he was, stuck with Brett Ritchie on that right wing. And I mean, we're approaching a deadline in a couple days here where on July 28th, actually the podcast will be out by then, but July 28th is no trade kicks in and he can list only 5 teams where he can be traded to, right? So if the Flames are looking to trade him, I mean, it's got to come in the next couple days, which is kind of crazy, or else your options are super limited. But I think Evolving Hockey, which is one of the many great analytical and forward-thinking websites, they kind of project his next contract to be about 6 years and $8 million average annual value. So that's something I would sign on the dotted line today. But I think definitely Johnny could get more than that in free agency, I think. So the way I look at it is Troy Brower's buyout is 1.5 million and that ends next season. So if you add that cap hit to Gaudreau's current 6.75, that brings him to 8.25, right? So if you're giving him $8 million, most fans might be like, wow, that's a lot of money, but I think it's fine. I think having Johnny long term is important for the Flames because we've seen Adam Fox leave, we've seen Dougie Hamilton leave, we've seen lots of players. I don't know if want out of Calgary is the right word, but they've left the Flames. And if we can keep Johnny Gaudreau, that would be awesome for the city because the city loves Johnny Gaudreau. It would be awesome for the market of Calgary because that can sell to other players that this big high profile guy wants to stay with Calgary, and a lot of people do, right? So I hope they can get a contract signed here. We're approaching that crucial deadline, as I said, so I hope they can announce a contract extension on Wednesday and everything's happy, but who knows, right?
Yeah, who knows? Johnny Gaudreau as well helped your young prospects. You drafted a lot of young U.S.-born prospects that also could help in that conversation as well. We are up against it, but I want to squeeze in one more question before I let you go. Keep your general manager hat. You are given the power to make one move and one move only. What is your one move to improve the Calgary Flames?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would have said Sam Reinhart before he went to Florida. Oh man, one move, hey?
Would have been good.
I'm gonna say, I'm gonna swing for the fences. I'm gonna say Jack Eichel. Why not, right? We haven't had a number one center since Joe Nieuwendyk. Let's bring him in. And
A lot of
depending on
that
the
chatter
cost,
on Twitter right now with Jack Eichel,
yeah. Yeah. So I mean, obviously depending on the cost, that'd be a great player to acquire. So
Awesome, James. This has been a ton of fun. You can find him. His Twitter handle has been on the screen the entire show if you need to find him on Twitter. Also find his stuff at seaofredunfiltered.com where he writes all about the Flames, him and his buddies there. Really good stuff today. James, thank you so much for your time today. This has been a ton of fun.
Thanks, John. And I'll plug one more thing. So you're a part of Bravera Media, same as me. So shout outs to Vi Chan. And I actually have my own podcast coming out starting next week with Audie James, who is pretty well known on Twitter. So our podcast is going to be called the Barn Burner Hockey Podcast. So that'll start coming out next week. So stay tuned for that. So thanks for having me on, John. This was awesome, man. Like the past, I don't know how long we've been going, but it feels like it's been 10 minutes, right? So
yeah, we went for the nice hour show, so it was good length, good broadcast today. So appreciate it, James. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks.
And thank you, listeners and viewers, for tuning in to the ASTV Productions and another episode of the Double Digit Hockey Show. I am your host, John Easthope. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you guys next Thursday again, same place. Have yourselves a good week.